That's really a good place to start. It's like, what are the stupid things that I'm paying for right now every month? Like, if I needed to eliminate something, let's get the stupid stuff out of the way first. There's only one way to create a wealth gap, and it's the separation between your income and your expenses. And you can either make more money, you can cut your expenses, or you can do both.
So I think that's one of the things that we have to get very clear on is money does matter within your financial life because it flows through your life, and that's what you get to use to move your life forward in today's society. And one of the things I think that we need to talk more about with people is a very important characteristic in your financial life, which is called stewardship.
If something truly matters to us, we're going to spend time evaluating what it is or isn't creating for us. If anything's going to begin to work in our favor, we first have to evaluate what kind of thinking or programming has created this vicious loop. Because most of the time, it's a programming problem that we don't even realize is a program in our brain that we have to almost zoom out and go, oh, this is why this keeps happening.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Legends podcast with your hosts, Nate, Brandon, and Brock. Remember, our insights are not direct financial advice, so consult with your financial team before making any decisions based on the topics discussed in this show.
Welcome back to Cash Flow Legends. Nate, Brock, and I are very excited to be here today. So we don't know when this will come out, but this is the week of Thanksgiving. So you may notice that this looks a little different if you're watching us on YouTube. Brock has already asked us if we're holding hands under the table. No, we're not. We're happily married to our wives who are both in town. We're at my house. Nate's family lives here close to where I do. And we thought it'd be cool to be able to record together. We didn't really think through how close we'd be sitting together and how that would open up opportunities to get hassled by Brock, but we got most of that out of the way this morning. So who needs enemies when you have friends?
That's
So
right.
if you appreciate this episode and this time that we spend together, we'd love likes, subscribes, and sharing. That's always very helpful. Remember, you can check us out on cashflowlegends.com to kind of know our process. But Brock, let's start off this way. Or Nate, we'll start with you. What is one thing that you were thankful for during the week of Thanksgiving?
I mean, it always goes back to family. I was talking to somebody recently, and we were just talking about, just the stress of life and things that we complain about sometimes. And there's a reframe that I heard one time that said, the things that you complain about, imagine those things just being completely removed from your life altogether. And how would that feel? How would that be? And so, you have arguments with family. It can be a stressful time for people or whatever, but hey, what if those people just weren't even in your life? And that's not permission for some people to get really excited about the idea of getting rid of family members. It's designed to really push us back into gratitude and just remind us of all the blessings that we have.
Brock, what about you?
I was actually going to say challenges, which is kind of funny to what Nate said, but thankful for the challenges that get brought our way and the joy we feel once we accomplish those. But I would also say, thankful for friends, family, community that we get to go, be a part of other people's lives.
I'm thankful that one, we get to do this and we get to be encouraged in our walk with the Lord. So we start every one of these with a prayer. Brock said something that really hit home to me in the prayer before we hit record. He said, for those who don't look forward to these times of year, and that just, it's a great reminder that not everybody gets excited about Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I did see that a lot in the education system, but we can forget that very easily. So just knowing that we have a Lord and Savior that loves us through that, and even in those trying times and those tests, like Brock said, there's an opportunity to grow and to honor Him. I'm thankful for that. And for those who don't have fathers, that may not be available on Thanksgiving, we have the opportunity to know the Lord and the best father that's ever been. So grateful for that, and grateful that even though I'm giving him a hard time because he's sitting close to me, the fact that we can get together and really uh, do life together. That's something that not everybody gets to experience. So we're excited about that. Brock, if you were here, we'd have to replan the layout because it would look really
Weird, awkward,
weird if we had to
uncomfortable.
sit you right here.
Yeah, I would not do that.
So, all right. Today, we're going to talk about something that you and I, we all see all the time, and we've heard it, but there's never really a clear way to what do I do to change it? And that's, how do we stop living paycheck to
Mhm.
paycheck? How do we break the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck? And Nate, one of the things that I think is so important to get very clear on this is it's not an income problem,
Yeah.
hardly ever. So at a high level, how often does the paycheck to paycheck or financial hamster wheel come up in our conversations?
Well, quite often, and then, like you said, it's not necessarily a money problem. It's a behavior problem. It's a lack of information problem. Like money can be stressful, but so can be folding a fitted sheet. You know, um, But and the reason why I use that example is because I used to get so frustrated folding fitted sheets, and one day I was just like, "There's got to be a better way." And so, lo and behold, I go on YouTube, and hey, there's actually a way to fold a fitted sheet where it looks nice, and it's not like it doesn't look like a tornado in the closet or whatever. So it really just boils down to one, admitting that you don't have everything figured out, and second, taking action, like leaning into information and ultimately changing your behavior. I think one of the things that's really powerful for a lot of people lately is the cash flow structure example that Brock did several weeks ago, or maybe a couple months ago. We've shown that to a lot of people, and it is very, very eye opening just to see what it looks like to create efficiency with your cash flow.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Brock, when you when you're interacting with somebody, I had this conversation yesterday or the day before with a member. There's a certain level of trust that has to be given for anybody to even open up their books and go, I need help, which we have to remember how humbling that is, that somebody's even willing to go, look, here's all my stuff. And there's a in-depth emotional connection that almost always is connected to the financial decisions that somebody has been making. Whether it be, I'm really excited about how well I've been doing, but I want to learn something new. There's shame sometimes, there's regret, there's disappointment, there's lots of negativity. I mean, these are things that we see daily, but it almost always has to do with the system or lack thereof of how money is flowing through their life. So, Brock, what's one of your favorite things that you get to see when you're taking somebody through that front side process of, hey, how does money flow through your life and where's it leaking out of your life?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just seeing the client become aware of what's going on. I think that is one of the biggest problem is people just aren't aware of what's actually happening in their world. Like we'll talk about, hey, well, I've got this much, this is my salary. I would fair to say 80 to 90% of the families that onboard with us have no idea how much money is actually coming in or leaving. And if you don't know those two numbers, you sure as heck aren't going to know how much you have to create wealth with, to do other things with. And so, one of the, things that is just clear that you want to get clear about. That was bad wording, but one of the things that you want to get clear about is how much money is actually coming in. Your salary might be 200 grand, but you may actually only be bringing home 150 grand. So once you are aware of the inflows in your life, and then you are aware of what's happening in your world today, of what you're spending on a regular basis, on your baseline spending, things get a whole lot clearer. And now you can start making confident decisions, faster decisions as it comes to your financial life moving forward.
There's something, as we've been walking people through this lately, we've been using this framework, and I'll say something like this after they've shared their situation or it's become clear they're living paycheck to paycheck. And when we listen well, we hear little hints of that in almost every conversation, whether it's a business owner, it's a personal economy with a husband and wife, it's a young adult who's just getting started. They'll say things like, man, I just don't know where the money goes. Or I get to the end of the month and I make enough that I should have money left over. And those are just key things that we listen for. But here is what I've really begun to see that is not normal, that allows us to really pour into people and give them hope and excitement is one, first know what's going on, Brock, like you just said. And Nelson Nash said that in Become Your Own Maker. Once we know what the problem is, we'll know what to do. And I like to add, when we know what to do, it also allows us to drown out the noise that is around us 24/7 about go get this rate of return, put your money over here, take this investment, yada, 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 yada. And that is really not what needs to happen first. And what I'm beginning to see is that how money flows through someone's life is much more spiritual than anything. And let me give you an example of what I mean by that. When you ask somebody how they measure success with their money related to the things that matter to them the most, how they view freedom, how they view wealth, and how their fitness, their finances, their family, their faith, their fellowship or their friends, whatever F you want to use, are in alignment with freedom and with wealth. And then they say, I don't have a plan for that. Would you like to? Everybody says, absolutely. What does that look like? Well, notice not once did I say anything about how much money do you make, because that's really not where we start. But where does the world start when we're game planning on money? It's not peace of mind, it's rate of return. And so, Nate, when you're working with somebody and they realize that they're living paycheck to paycheck, how often is that not actually the reality, but that's what they think it is?
A lot of times. And it's because nobody's actually sat down and tracked, what their inflows and outflows are. Our ability to create anything is not going to be based off of what's being siphoned out of our life, held in some sort of lockbox or whatever that's, might be creating a rate of return or whatever. Our ability to create something is going to be in the separation between our income and our expenses. That's our greatest ability to create anything. A lot of times we start spending money on stupid stuff before we can really afford to spend money on stupid stuff. And so that's really a good place to start. It's like, what are the stupid things that I'm paying for right now every month? Like, if I needed to eliminate something, let's get the stupid stuff out of the way first. There's only one way to create a wealth gap, and it's the separation between your income and your expenses. And you can either make more money, you can cut your expenses, or you can do both. But definitely, you want to get the stupid stuff out of your life before you do anything else. But most importantly, have something that is tracking what's coming in and what's going out so you can see what that wealth gap is, the separation between your income and your expenses, and determine what you're going to do with that. But to what you said earlier, what we talk about and what we teach with currents is make sure that you've got your peace of mind fund set up before you start chasing rates of return, because that's going to build resilience for when the unknown things get thrown at you. And we don't want to get derailed, because so often we get derailed and we get deflated because we get derailed and we're like, oh, this doesn't work. I'm never going to get ahead.
Brock, when you see somebody that's on that treadmill, what's some of your favorite things that you've seen maybe in the last couple of weeks where they agree to go through the process and they agree to go through inflow and outflow? So all we're basically saying is how much money's coming into your life, how much is going out, and can we create a bigger spread? When someone's able to see that, what's some of your favorite parts of that? Maybe, somebody that you visited with recently where they didn't think they had any flexibility in money, and then you find with the right questions, a chunk of money.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that a lot of it is just their joy and what's the word? Relaxation, maybe, of just like, hey, like we are actually okay. We're not as bad as we thought. And most of the time, we find that they are saving more than they thought. It just might not show up as much because they do end up spending it. The opportunity is there, but sometimes they just don't see it. And so, you know, one of the things that, you know, we want to talk about is the fact like we're not saying you are a terrible person if you're living paycheck to paycheck. Like it is very aware to us that some people just fall on bad terms, and life gets out of control sometimes. And yeah, there might be a season where you actually do live paycheck to paycheck, but that shouldn't be your default to where that's where you stay for forever. You ought to be taking some time to organize what's going on, to actually look at what's going on. And if I had a challenge for anybody was for the next quarter or the next 2 months, sit down at least twice a month and go through every single dollar that comes in and every single dollar that goes out and track it. Look at it, see what's going on. Stupid's a hard word. I might start calling you Dave, Nate, but uh, you know, don't like there are some things that you probably don't need to spend money on, right? Like for me, I love, eating out. There are probably some meals that I could probably cut back on and it not hurt my world at all. That's just something, you look at. Now that you're aware of it, you have a choice. You either make the choice to continue to do it or you make the choice to not do it and then you decide and do it. So that's what I would, just challenge people like just take a little bit of time to step in and just take a look at what's going on.
Brock, I think your and Nate's points are great. Of if something truly matters to us, we're going to spend time evaluating what it is or isn't creating for us. If anything's going to begin to work in our favor, we first have to evaluate what kind of thinking or programming has created this vicious loop. Because most of the time, it's a programming problem that we don't even realize is a program in our brain that we have to almost zoom out and go, "Oh, this is why this keeps happening." I've heard that 3 times in the past 2 weeks. I've heard something along the lines of, we took them through the cash flow structure video that we did a couple weeks ago, and I just let them let it marinate. And I asked them what jumped out to them. And one of our members, his fiance, she said, and this really, I'll probably never forget this. She goes, "I now understand why I'm right back where I was less than 2 years later." Because she said, "I swore I would never do this again after I got out of debt. But now I see that the system and the programming has to be replaced because I'm right back where I was, actually in a worse position." And she was disappointed, she was frustrated, she was aggravated. But what I love about it is you have a soon to be husband and wife who are communicating about money, and I was able to just compliment them and go, "Look, take my word for it, please, at 43, if you and your wife can get on the same page about the prioritization of how money flows through your life, there will be a lot less wasteful spending, and if you do just splurge, it'll be because you're on the same page and you have a reservoir or a peace of mind fund that allows you to do so, and you get more and more clarity." So when you ask people how much money sitting somewhere needs to be sitting there to give you peace of mind, don't think about rate of return, don't think about how much it's generating, just peace of mind. That question makes a lot of people uncomfortable, especially if they've been living at zero over and over and over again. They don't realize the weight that that carries to have a little buffer for when things don't go according to plan.
I think you also need to be patient in letting that grow a little bit, at least to have 1 to 2 months, because what is an emergency fund or peace of mind fund for? Well, it's to take care of you when things are going wrong, and so that you don't have to disrupt your lifestyle. You don't have to dip into your investments and ruin their growth, and you don't have to go back into bad debt, right? And so for a time being, things might be tight. We all go through seasons. Things might be tight. So in that season, probably not a good idea to be traveling and doing luxurious things that, just aren't in the budget right now. And I don't love the word budget, but like some people need a budget and then they need the structure around that budget so it actually works in real life. Otherwise, it's just a spreadsheet and you don't really have any accountability with it.
So, as a diehard budgeter spreadsheeter for most of my adult life, here's how I view budgeting now. We want to shift from budgeting to awareness. And we want our systems to match up with our awareness that matches up with what matters to us the most and who it's impacting: kids, family, lifestyle, whatever the case may be. Now, I still like to know what our budget is, but I look at that more like just awareness. And let's be sure our systems are allowing my wife and I, Leah, to prioritize what's most important next. And Myron Golden says this, and it's stuck with me. we have to reestablish our new level of poverty or our new zero. So I was talking to a member yesterday and I said, you have always been okay with your zero being zero, but that's also what created when life didn't go according to plan, had some medical issues, had some family needs, and she needed to step in and help. Well, if you're at zero, what alternatives are out there to step in and help? Credit card debt, bad loans, stopping investments, wherever you have your capital that was working for you, now it's getting hammered by inflation or interest rates or whatever the case may be. So I said, what is that peace of mind number that would allow you to get to 2, 3, 4, 5 months? And she was like, well, it'd probably be around this. And I'm like, okay. And now you always keep that. It was, I think, 10,000. Now you always keep that 10,000 there. And that way, let's try to get it to another level at some point. So now your money's working for you like a muscle instead of against you, dragging you down to the bottom of the ocean. And now you said something earlier, and I mentioned spiritual earlier. We don't really give enough credit or awareness because it sounds phooey to that money is just a tool that is in line with our heart, our mind, our behavior. And we don't think about it as a spiritual thing, but it is in some way, shape, or form. It is, I think Rabbi Daniel Lapin said in Business Secrets from the Bible, he said, money is the purest indicator of the condition of our heart.
Hmm.
And I think that's something that doesn't get discussed often when we're thinking about money, because we are all programmed. I'd say 80 to 90% of Americans are programmed to be on the 9 to 5 grind. We're programmed to trade time for money. Yet, how many times have we heard somebody say that money doesn't really matter? So let's dive into that a little bit. When you hear somebody say money doesn't really matter, what are y'all's thoughts on that?
I just go back to what Zig said. Zig Ziglar famously said, "Money isn't everything, but it ranks right up there with oxygen." And it's not that we are fixated or obsessed with money, but we're not you can't be oblivious to it as well, because um, the things that we choose to uh, stick our head in the sand on, we forget that 95% of our body is still exposed. And even if we don't want to look at it, it's still coming. We're still in danger. um so that's something that, when I hear people say that, it's often because when people say that, it usually means they've never had to worry about money, or they don't understand it for what it really is.
And they're in a vicious cycle that they've just accepted as the programming, and they have not been willing to evaluate that the thinking that got me here, that keeps me in this vicious cycle, is not going to be the thinking that gets me where I want to go next. It literally is like taking one program out of your brain. And I've heard wealthy people say that for years and years over the past 7 years. And I'm like, what are they talking about? And now I know what they're saying. I have programming in my brain no different than a computer program. That program in my computer is outdated and it will not allow me to go any further. It keeps putting a glass ceiling on my head. So I've literally got to go, what's faulty with this programming? How do I unplug it and start plugging in new programming, which, as you said earlier, Brock, takes time. It's going to, and so what is the number one thing that America is notorious for is how fast you can do
Obesity.
something. And well, what, okay, great. Obesity. Why?
Because
Programming.
yep, it's funny that you said because I've heard people say, "Oh, the money doesn't matter." That might be okay in the sense of when you're doing a business deal and you're trying to help somebody and the money doesn't matter. But when it's your own personal financial life, it does matter.
Yeah.
It'd be the same thing as, "Oh, food doesn't matter." Well, okay, then go eat McDonald's because it's cheap every single day. Tell me how that works out for you. I saw a documentary once. It doesn't work. It doesn't turn out very well. So I think that's one of the things that we have to get very clear on is money does matter within your financial life because it flows through your life, and that's what you get to use to move your life forward in today's society. And one of the things I think that we need to talk more about with people is a very important characteristic in your financial life, which is called stewardship. Do you guys know what the definition of that is?
No,
Not the pure
tell me what
definition
you
of stewardship.
yeah.
I don't.
The conducting, supervising, or managing of something, especially the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. Well, if this is, I don't know, this might ruffle some feathers, but
Ruffle 'em.
if you believe in God, you believe you've been put on this earth and that you have, Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, then it's probably fair to say that you believe that God has given you everything and that He is the author and creator of all things, and everything that you have is a gift. Well, guess what? It's true about your income. So that income, that money that flows through your life, is somebody else's. So are you going to be a good steward of it because it's not yours? Or are you just going to throw it to the wayside and be that guy who put the talent in the ground and just waited for his master to come back and find out, oh, he wasn't a good steward of it. He was lazy.
The famous poet Lecrae once said, "Everything I own is just a temporary loan."
Yep.
And I never forgot that.
Well, you stole my thunder. I wasn't going to go with Lecrae, but
What year was he, like 1879? That's pretty
No,
good.
no, no, no. Look, Lecrae's actually a Christian hip hop artist.
That was
it's
a joke,
almost
man.
like quote Eminem. uh, so was watching a 3-part series that one of our members sent us about money and faith. And he said something very similar. Once we realize that everything that we own is just God's own loan, which is the same thing that Lecrae is saying. If you do a little bit of digging and praying through what the Bible says about wealth and how many times wealth or money or gold or silver or behavior around it is discussed, it's one of the most talked about topics in the Bible, period, point blank. So, like Nate said, if we're going to choose to stick our head in the sand about this may ruffle some feathers too, then the devil's got you right where he wants you if you have a personal relationship with the Lord. Because all money is, we believe it's a condition, it shows the condition of our heart, is an opportunity to fight evil. I mean, if we really want to go that deep into it, there's ugly things going on behind the scenes all the time related to the inanimate object of money. And so we have to be aware of this. So one of the ways that I've started helping people think through their misguided thought process on not caring about money is I'll ask them, what do they spend the majority of their time doing every week? And almost everybody, it's work. And why do you spend the majority of your time working? If money doesn't matter, then why do you work all the time? Yes, that's a mic drop. So,
Mhm.
because it does matter, we've just chosen to build a programming around telling ourselves it doesn't matter to make ourselves feel more comfortable that we're not creating the value. And quite possibly, we know deep down we're not being a good steward of it. Because if we are created in the creator's image, then there's got to be some correlation there to being good stewards of the things he's given us. And guys, this is tough to hear for me. If I make 100 grand a year and 99 grand of it leaves my life, period, for nothing related to good stewardship of God's kingdom, there's some evaluation that has to go on in that thought process. Because if you ask anybody, hey, if you controlled more of your time, if you've had a bigger spread of money, what would you do? And I always like starting from time because that's really what we're getting at is control of time almost always. The awesome people that we get to work with almost always say things like, well, yeah, they would travel more, do things like that, but they almost always say, I said, okay, once the travel's over, because you'll be miserable if you travel every day, most of the time. Now, people don't believe that, but it's true. Okay. Almost all of them would give more of their time. They would give more to charity. They would volunteer more at church. They would go on more mission trips. They would pour into more people. So money does matter because we would do more things to impact the kingdom in a positive way if we had a better relationship with money. But if we're on the financial treadmill with no plan to handle up and down seasons, we will continue to go backwards. And so I think what we're all really saying is first there has to be an awareness that what I'm doing is not working to the way that I think it should. And then two, what can I do differently that will allow me to evaluate what I'm doing and possibly start unplugging some programming and plugging in some new programming. So one of the things that I love about working with the people that we work with is when they get to that point, they begin to recognize that it's going to take some time to get this new programming installed. And a big part of the programming installation is first the uninstalling the old programming, which is the most uncomfortable piece. As Nelson said, unlearning is harder to do than learning. But I don't know about you guys. One of my favorite things when you take somebody through that cash flow structure, that conversation, and their eyes light up and they go, I am creating value in this world and I am creating more money that could be a tool for things that matter to us the most. I just didn't have a good system in place. So all the leeches were leached into my money and I didn't even know where it was going. Now I do. What's jumping out there?
Well, good news for anybody who's listening is if that resonates with you, we can help you with all those things.
Sure.
You know, the thing that we have really enjoyed this year is walking people through the current strategy and showing them how they can create rules for themselves so that they can win and not be so caught up in this idea of fighting against a budget, fighting against your own tendencies because often in a budget there's no real rules or structure built around it because it's very easy if it's on a spreadsheet it's very easy to just hey let me move these numbers to this spot right here whereas if you're following a set of rules and you're abiding, but you're not violating your own rules through this structure that we're talking about with currents, then now you're not aware of so much of Parkinson's law that you're having to fight against.
So Parkinson's law, for those that may have never heard that term before, is the the way the system's created is as my income goes up, my expenses start catching my income. I need that new truck payment, and this is why almost all of the American world is based off of what's the monthly payment.
Yep.
Brock, what are you thinking?
I think that is so correct that if this is resonating with you and you're like, hey, I need some help on this, then reach out to get the help because we have those spreadsheets that'll help you out. And then we also have the structure to help guide you and put that in place once it's on the spreadsheet to say, hey, I want to start living this way and start being a good steward of my capital and putting it in place. So there's no reason for you not to.
I think one of the things that's so humbling when we get invited into these conversations is as we get to know people one on one, we first get to let them know that we haven't got it all figured out. But this is what we do every day. So if we have a carpenter who needs to be great at being a carpenter, he's trying to make as much money as he can as a carpenter. That's just what we're doing with the rules of money. That's what we do every day. And so one of the things that's most exciting for somebody is when they start realizing that my behavior can create the life I want if I match up the programming and the systems to make that happen. So here's what naturally starts happening. The flippant or illogical spending starts going down because they can see logically what the system's going to create. And they go, oh, okay, in 3 months, if I just do what I've been doing with this new programming, we're going to be here. Oh, well, now we can plan 9 months out. We're going to take that family vacation and it's not going to go on a credit card that we spend the next year paying off at 30%. because now we have a system that created the capital that allowed us to go enjoy that vacation. And then we can do it again next year. And it might even be a little bit bigger vacation because we understand how to make the system work for us. And experiences are what is most important in our family. And now momentum starts working in our direction instead of working against us. And I would make this bold statement. Y'all call me out if I'm wrong. All anyone who's really willing to go through that process and have their current programming evaluated and be brought beside it a new set of programming with the tools and the mindset and the questions and the accountability, it's a key piece, the accountability, will feel better about what's next within 2025. If it started today in 2024, at the end of 2024, they can have in a meeting or two clarity on, I can be somewhere I've never been before with the dollars in my life that match up with what matters to me the most related to the things that matter to me the most. Because that's the kicker, guys. The traditional financial world is cookie cutter, and that's the opposite for us. We're like, well, what's important to you? What matters in your faith? What matters in your family? What matters in your finances? What matters in your fitness? So I've really been pushing people. What does freedom and wealth mean to you? Because if you don't know that, how could we ever build a system around getting to that point? And even if we're off by a degree and we're measuring it, which we like to do quarterly, we can get back on the tracks pretty quick, or we can go, oh, we're going to redirect this now because we have a new priority and we know how to get there. So really, it's just a plan and being confident in that plan. And Nate and I and Brock, as former athletes and dads of athletes now, and soon to be, Brock, you don't have any kids yet, but one day when you have kids, one of the greatest things that we love seeing with our kids is when they're competing and learning, but they are consistently showing up in a system that allows them to grow. Simple as that. There's nothing better than that. So it's not just about how much does something cost. It's about what's the value it's going to bring, how's it going to benefit our family in the future, and is it going to allow us to let our money love on the things that matter to us the most?
You said something earlier that reminded me, I've done it both ways before, and I can tell you wholeheartedly, experiences are a lot sweeter when there's not a negative debt attached to it.
Mm.
And when we have the opportunity to build out a structure and a system, a cash flow management system, a banking system, all those things that we start to begin to lean more and more into and eventually lean very heavily into, then now the debt that we owe is a debt to ourselves, and that is the best debt that you can owe, is a debt that you owe to yourself.
Don't get me fired up.
And it's a lot more about making memories than it is dreams.
Boy, you just gave me a visual in my head. Do we have a path to memories, or are these always just dreams? I'll end with this. This is a true member conversation. Dear friends of ours who I've talked about what we do for years, never over pushed. They've asked questions. We've talked probably for the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years, 7, 8 years. They have finally, they got to a point where they're like, the programming we have and how we interact and what we do is not going to allow us to have a choice for what's the next season of life while they're in their early 40s. High income earners, do really well, great, dependable people in the community, but they've been brought to the forefront of they are trading time for money. And the only resources that they have are locked away for the next 25 years. Okay. So now that they've begun to be willing to pull out some of the old programming and begin to learn and read and discuss new programming, in less than 6 months, Opportunity has found some of their capital with a good cash flow structure system, with a good peace of mind system, with a good approach of how money's flowing through their life. And I asked him yesterday, as he gave me a check for a private investment that's going to create guaranteed money flowing back to him with little to no risk because it's connected to me. I said, what are your thoughts? He goes, I've had this money all the time, but I've never had control of it. And I've never had it in a system that benefits me. So I never knew how to seize an opportunity. But now that I have capital that I control, I see where Nelson said opportunity finds capital, and I got to get better and better at how I utilize the capital. Now, key piece for them, they had a peace of mind fund already. They had a reservoir, is what we call it. They have positive cash flow because they've already done an audit of their inflows and outflows. And they had a pool of capital that for them, they're going to be using for infinite banking into whole life policies. And that's just going to make what they were doing better. It's going to make what they do next better. And so this is all connected. And it's like, it's kind of like putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Once you know what all the pieces are and you start knowing where they're going, it starts really creating the memories you want instead of the dreams, which are just kind of like pie in the sky pieces, that you can't grasp, you can't put your hands on. It's just something you hope happens. And hope, as Brock's dad taught us, is not a financial strategy.
It's a bad one at that.
It's a bad one at that. Yep. So on this week of Thanksgiving, we're grateful for everybody that chooses to listen to us. We're always encouraged when our members or soon to be members message us and go, "Hey man, I'm really grateful for what you said there." A lot of times, I don't know, guys, if you notice this, but people tell us things jumped out to them that I never even thought were relevant. It just was kind of a in the moment conversation that's normal to us because this is what we do every day, but it really hit home. And I know we don't take that lightly. So we hope everybody listening has a phenomenal Thanksgiving or had one once they listen to this, and hit those likes, subscribes, and remember that the process that we take people through absolutely costs nothing other than your commitment to time and committing to the process so that you can decide if you want to reevaluate your programming and put some new programming in. Hope you have a blessed day. We'll catch you on the next one.